Okay. And I believe we have everybody. So I will call to order the Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting at 7:01 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the approval of Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of December 21st, 2020. Were there any additional additions, corrections, questions regarding those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. The second item on the agenda is just a discussion point. We have two discussions this evening that kind of bookend the meeting, or the meeting this evening. So cybersecurity is something that doesn't seem to be new for us, but this is, for me, easily one of the largest concerns I have as council president is cybersecurity with the city. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the communication aspect that we've talked about. And sometimes it feels like it's brushed aside and not taken too seriously. And if the city of Ravenna's network were to be compromised, it's one that could have, devastating effects on our community, public safety, the ability to just process the most basic services to residents and the community. So once again, we heard that now for the third wave, someone was potentially compromised through a phishing attack using email. So this is third wave, I call it, because there was multiple people each time that we've had this discussion. So I've spoken to some members of council when this first occurred, some of the administration a few weeks ago, and then eventually put out an email to council members warning and some of the administration, just the dangers of these phishing attacks that are going on. So in response to that, I have a few updates and changes, simple changes. So the first thing I just want to give an update on is the ATP implementation that we purchased not too long ago. So I spoke to Quality IP yesterday and asked where we were with that. And it is nearly, if not complete by this point. So we should be seeing that implemented here very soon. And if it hasn't been, it's been escalated to a point that I think we should see it on all email accounts here shortly. And if possible, I've asked Quality IP that if council emails could have the out of network banner turned on when receiving emails. This is something that doesn't sound like it's a likelihood, but I asked Katie nonetheless to see if it's possible. The issue is with just a small number of emails. I'm not too sure it's a switch that you can turn on for the entire city or turn off for the entire city. It doesn't sound like you can pick and choose. So with that being said, all outward facing emails on our website or elsewhere will no longer contain personal emails. This is only council, but I think it's an important step. So anything that we need to update in terms of the website are getting updated, or cards to put that out there, we're going to do. And I am requesting, I spoke to Christina on IT committee agendas. I want to have some discussion point regarding cybersecurity updates. And I'll make that request every single month until I feel that we've gotten to a point that we're okay. And so with that being said, I sent out an email to test the Cisco. Along with that, you have Katie's contact information. Please bookmark it, put it in your phone. If you have any questions to request training, other information regarding IT issues, setting up email, whatever it may be, contact her at this point. And then I also want to just bring up again any requests that really are made by the mayor, the administration. And I don't want to let go of that future cybersecurity training. If there's anything we can do, maybe council can look at, and the IT committee can look at future training, implement that ATP as quickly as possible. And then also making the request to turn on the banner for all out of network emails coming in. So even without the ATP that we just purchased, this simple procedure could have saved us a little bit of a headache that we're kind of going through now. Understanding that some of the responses coming from personal emails wouldn't have caught it. But I think in the first two waves, it did involve people using the .gov email addresses that were impacted, and that certainly could have helped or mitigated the situation. So just to close this and open up to anything that anyone else would like to say or ask, we focus on a lot with the budget concerning things like economic development, the water meter upgrades, programming at Parks and Rec, or upgrades with public safety. And the question still lies, where does computer security fit in? And with a consulting agency and a part-time consultant to decipher what that agency is presenting, we as elected officials and even the city employers are on the front line of this cybersecurity effort, in addition to all of the duties that we're responsible for. So I just wanted to make that statement and encourage everybody to stay vigilant. And if there's any training, I just want to bring this back to the forefront to have the discussions in the future about this. So with that, this is just a discussion point. If anybody else has anything they'd like to say, I'll open it up. But
I do have a question on that, Andrew. You're saying now that any email that we receive in our Ravenna.gov account, if it's coming outside the network, will have an identifier on it?
It should, and that's what I'm advocating for. I can't do that because it sounds like right now it's turned on for all of the city, not just specific departments or the members of council and the clerk of council. If that was the issue, I would absolutely turn that on right now. I think Katie's even watching, so I'm advocating for that across the city because I think it could have helped in the beginning.
I know a lot of organizations use that, and we use the out of network banner, and it's very helpful because it kind of helps you screen the emails before you even look at it. So, you're going to shake your head a little bit if you get the Andrew Kluge at yahoo.com email. You're going to know that that's not from you because of the out of the network banner. So I think that's a great idea. And cybersecurity is getting trickier and trickier. So we're going to have to keep up with it. It's going to be really hard to keep up with it because it feels like the people that are doing the bad things are quicker than we are. And so we need to keep up with it, keep educating people and reminding people because it's not as simple anymore. So
I appreciate your ear. I just wanted to get that out there. And if nobody else has anything for now, we'll move on. So number 3 on the agenda this evening is an ordinance to authorize the mayor to apply for the 2020, I believe this is the AFG FEMA assistance grant. This is public health and safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, actually, this is to apply for a grant. This is a $70,000 grant. We talked about it in committee. I believe it is for 20 sets. It's for gear for the firemen to wear. If there's any questions, we do have Mark, Captain Chappell, on the line too, if there's any questions. No? Okay.
Well, what's the pleasure of the committee then?
Ordinance.
Number 5 on the agenda is an ordinance to authorize the mayor to, back up.
It's
Number
a grant.
4. Yeah, you're right. So I read that twice then. So I'm going to go back to number 3 because we talked about number 4. No, we did.
No, we talked about
Using
3
myself.
because that was 70,000. This one, the next one is
State Fire Marshal's grant.
yes.
So
Mhm,
an
that's
ordinance.
for-
Thanks, Amy. An ordinance to authorize the mayor to apply for the 2021 State Fire Marshal's grant for equipment.
And this is the cap on it. Let's see, is $15,000. There's no match. The previous one, I apologize, 3, there is a 5% match. This one, there is no match, and it is for equipment. It's for turnout gear, helmets, boots, and gloves.
Any questions regarding this? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
All Right. And number 5 on the agenda is an ordinance to authorize the mayor to donate 20 air packs to Macedon Center Fire Department. This is also public health and safety.
Yes, this just came up. I asked that we put on here, due to some of the air packs that we have that we will be donating, they will be expiring within a month or two. But this particular fire department does need these, and we will receive a monetary donation back for giving them. They're no use to us, but seeing that there's an expiration date on them, and this particular fire department reached out to us for these, it's, we're going to get a little bit of money back. So if anybody has any questions, this was not discussed in committee. It was just added. It was one of those things that came up, and due to the expiration date of the packs, we needed to get this out, get them out, and we'll receive some monetary money back on that.
Chief,
Any
just out of
questions?
curiosity, how did you come across, where's Macedon at, and how did you come across it?
Macedon, if you don't mind me speaking up, Macedon is in New York. Long story short, Streetsboro has the same old packs that we did because we bought our packs in conjunction with them 15 years ago, as we did this time around. They put theirs up on govdeals.com. They didn't get any bites on it, but then that Macedon Fire Department, which is in New York, like I said, they reached out to them and said, "Look, hey, we're a smaller department. We do training. We don't care if the packs expired. We're interested in the packs. Not necessarily want to buy them. Could you donate them to us?" And they too, in return, I guess, received the donation back for the packs that they had. So knowing that we had the packs, the chief of Streetsboro got in touch with me and said, "Hey, instead of scrapping your packs and getting nothing, this department may give you some money for them, a donation back to your department or the city if you're interested." So I contacted the gentleman that runs through their department, and he got back to me and said, "Hey, yeah, absolutely. I would love your packs." So he asked if we would accept the $1,000 donation in return if we were to donate him our packs.
Great. Any other questions regarding this item? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Thanks. Number 6 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Portage County Public Defender for the indigency representation. This is planning committee, Mr. Karras.
This is just our regular contract with them. None of the provisions in the contract have changed. It's $150 per charge. I think there was a question about what does that pay for? If we read the contract, and I think there is a schedule pursuant to an ordinance passed, I don't know, 20 years ago. So I'm assuming there's some sort of fee schedule that limits how much we have to pay. We could ask, I don't think our law director's on tonight, but he might know more about the specifics. But it is the same contract we've been signing year after year, but it just provides that we pay for the legal representation for any indigent person in the city who gets charged and can't afford their own lawyer.
Any questions?
This is just usually it's a yearly thing, and I think we're required to do that as well.
Yeah. I don't think we have a choice there.
Yeah.
No.
Well, what is the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Number 7 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for a grant through OPWC Clean Ohio Conservation Fund. This is also planning.
Okay, we talked about this last week. There were some questions and concerns, and I'll admit some confusion, at least on my part. If you recall, back in late summer, we investigated the acquisitions of property around the Diamond Street area, what is owned by Emerald Lake, or the Emerald Lake development there. And the piece of property would be used by Parks and Recs as a conservation type park, or whatever you want to call it. And we have Mr. Neil Hess here. He's just turned his camera on. Good evening. He can certainly shed a lot more light. He's the consultant that's been working with the property owners and the city to try to forge an agreement that doesn't cost the city any money to acquire this property for the purpose of creating this conservation park. There was costs in the summer. We paid, I can't remember the exact amount. I think we allocated about $2,000, $2,500 for appraisals, which were done. We applied for one grant, WRSS, or like, you can help me out here with it, all the letters involved. We didn't get that grant, but we came close. The other grant is the Clean Ohio Conservation Grant, which I thought was the bigger fund. I thought one grant was going to pay for the offset or the matching component of the grant we're applying for now. But then Neil explained to us, is there a third grant involved? And that's where I get a little confused.
No.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for inviting me tonight. So there is not currently a third grant involved. The way we structured this was if we would have gotten the EPA grant, that would have paid for 100% of the property acquisition. It also would have paid for some invasive species management work on the site, which it could use. The Clean Ohio grant, the way we tried to structure it was that it also would pay 100% of the project cost. But by doing that, essentially, we would be using some of the land value as match. So and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if the property appraised at $1 million, then you could get up to 75% of that for your project cost. So I was trying to structure it so that that would still be sufficient to complete the acquisition activities. Hopefully, it would not have provided any additional money for invasive species management for the site. There is the potential Land and Water Conservation Fund is another grant program. It's possible to get a few $100,000 out of that program. You're not going to get what it would take to fully complete the project, but you've at this point you've already paid for your due diligence, so there's really no cost to the city to keep working and trying to raise money to purchase the property. I would certainly recommend reapplying to the WRSP program this summer. You just missed getting funded, so you were less than 1 point away from the funding range for the project that was funded. We did have kind of a debrief call with Ms. Watkins and Ohio EPA to discuss that. And in that call, they reinforced that they really liked the project. They wanted to fund it. It was just an extremely competitive year in that program. So we just missed it. My gut feeling is had we done this a year ago, had this opportunity arisen and we applied for that program a year ago, knowing that it was less competitive in 2019, I have no doubt we would have gotten funded that year. But, and just a lot of times that's how it goes. It's going to be the same with Clean Ohio. I was told secondhand yesterday, I heard that they had 8 applications. So it's going to be another extremely competitive round. My hope was that maybe not all the money would be requested, but with 8 applications, all the money is undoubtedly going to be requested. So we just, we do the best we can. And I would recommend if this, no matter how we do on this Clean Ohio, I think it's definitely, we want to give it a shot. But we keep trying if the landowner and if the city is interested in continuing to try.
So in reading your email, my question is, if we apply for the Clean Ohio grant, which is coming up pretty soon by February, early February, and we get it, that still requires a 25% match, but we could pay for it with the excess appraised value of the land.
That is correct.
So the grant would fund, in our essence, 125% of what we need to buy the property. Is that?
It would fund 100% of what you need. The landowner would have to accept 75% of the appraised fair market value.
And you're in the middle, right? So do you know if that's what they would go for? The Wellingtons, right?
I think it's best for the city and the landowner to negotiate that. Okay. I am a real estate broker. The landowner has not retained me to represent them, although I imagine I will have a role in that regard. But I've just been so focused on trying to get grants to get the property funded at this point.
Okay, so if we apply for the Clean Ohio grant and get it, we still have that negotiation involved. One of the options would be to wait until the summer and apply for the other grant we didn't get last year. And that would pay for the matching component, correct?
Yeah, the WRSP program pays 100%. So they don't have a local match requirement. They don't have a 25% match requirement. They pay 100% of your project cost, which is great. Just a quick clarification. We actually submitted the application last Friday. It did not have the city resolution in it. So if the city decides not to proceed, you can easily withdraw it. But we did go ahead and submit the application because it was due last Friday. It's my understanding that we have until I think February 10th is when they meet to do their scoring. So we would have until then to submit the, there was two items we were missing was the resolution from the city to apply, and a letter of intent was also needed. So we would have until then to supply both of those documents. It's my understanding. We do have to do a presentation to the NRAC, which is the kind of the deciding body on January 27th. The sooner we could get the resolution and the letter of intent, certainly the better. But we'd have to have it by February 10th, my understanding, to be eligible.
Well, council meets on February 1st. And I think so in your opinion, would that be good enough considering presentations occur before February?
I think so. I think we could explain it during the presentation that, what the council schedule is. Hopefully they'll be understanding. And if not, the worst they can do is disqualify us. There'll be another round of Clean Ohio. It has been reauthorized for another year as well. So there's going to be another round of Clean Ohio, either late 2021 or early 2022. I do a lot of grant writing, and my belief is you try to get every possible source you can to maximize your potential for completing the project. And especially since it's not going, like I said, it's not going to cost you anything additional in order to keep applying now. And also just on the expenses, I can't remember how much council authorized. I was thinking it was like 7,000 that council had authorized for due diligence. We did not spend that much. I think it was somewhere to 2,000 to 4,000 is what was actually spent on appraisals. We had a botanist do a biological inventory of the property, which was really helpful. They found some really, really interesting things. And I think that was about it.
Okay. I don't know if other people have questions about this.
The only question I have is, has the city received a copy of the appraisal?
I do not know. If not, I'm happy to provide it. I do know it was included in the Clean Ohio application, which I'm pretty sure I gave Judy a copy of. I'm certain I did.
Okay.
And I can provide the appraisal.
We should be able to get a copy of the appraisal and the botanist report as well, since we paid for it. I would like to see us get that.
Absolutely. I know they were included in the application, but I'll also send them separately to Judy.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I know Judy had another meeting tonight. Other questions? We certainly have some time before our meeting in February. So my suggestion is that we move it forward, at least to give us a little more time. And I don't see a whole lot of downside in going forward. It is a little confusing trying to put together the pieces. It didn't necessarily work out exactly the way we had planned last summer, but it's still an opportunity I think is worth pursuing. So that's my recommendation, but obviously it's up to the entire council.
Does anybody else have any questions? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Thanks, Neil, for filling in the gaps there.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks for showing up tonight, Neil. Appreciate
You're You're quite welcome. Any follow-up questions, just get them to Judy, and I'm happy to do the best I can to answer them.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on from number 7 to number 8 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Quality Control Inspection. This is also planning, Mr. Karas.
And this is another ongoing contract. We pay a third party to do some inspections for the city. The only change in the contract is an interesting sort of offset. I don't remember the exact numbers. Bob I don't have the contract in front of me. I recall it was around $60 an hour or so for regular pay, regular time, which is 3% higher than what we paid last time. But the overtime fee or hourly rate is actually 3% less. So I'm not sure why they did it that way. But otherwise, the contract's pretty much the same types of services. So Bob can explain exactly what they do.
Well, they are our eyeballs in communication directly with the contractor. And if there's issues, then they would call my department and we would make the decisions based on the city, what our contracts would be, or our roadway work permits, or that sort of thing. Or if there's issues with residents, they're supposed to communicate with us. They're not supposed to actually make decisions for the city, but they communicate with us. They write daily reports. They keep track of quantities, pay items if we're paying. Primarily, the reports state where the contractor worked, if there was issues with residents or motorists, flaggers, that sort of thing.
Any questions from council? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Number 9 on the agenda is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the state of Ohio for the management of RLF funds. This is Community and Economic Development.
Yes, this is a requirement with the Ohio Development Services Agency. This particular RLF agreement is for the Economic Development Revolving Loan Funds. Anytime you have economic development loan funds from the state, you are required to have this agreement in place for the program income that gets replaced or paid in as the loans are paid off. This allows us to reloan the funding to new businesses and other businesses. It can be used for construction purposes, which requires prevailing wage, and it can also be used for acquisition purposes. It's a housekeeping item.
Any questions from council? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Number 10 on the agenda is an ordinance to approve the December 2020 accounting transfers and advances. This is the finance director, Mr. Huff.
Yes, thank you. This one, there's just one small little advance from a grant fund that's going to get returned to the general fund, and that grant comes in with a very minimal amount. That's all, just a standard normal grant advance.
Any questions from council? What's the pleasure of the committee?
Ordinance.
Ordinance.
Thanks. And then the last item on the agenda is another discussion point surrounding the city of Ravenna and traffic calming. Rob, would you like to lead this off, or?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the intersection of two issues. One is our council president's desire to see traffic calming as a sort of alternative to putting up stop signs and other things, or other methods that other cities are being more sort of innovative about to help, reduce speed and other things that cause crashes and other kinds of traffic incidents. And then the other issue is there's been a few concerns from residents on Highland Street in my district where there have been some accidents and some concerns about safety. A lot of the residents on that street see it as high traffic area for people who avoid driving through downtown. And there are stretches, say from Freedom all the way down to Chestnut, where there are nothing to stop you from, there's no stop signs, no stop lights or anything like that. So the recent issue was a resident who had his front porch demolished when a car traveling east from that segment I just mentioned, from say Chestnut towards Freedom, according to the traffic report, hit a patch of ice, swerved all the way over to the northern side of the street, hit one house, and then took out his this resident's front porch. So there have been some incidents, but we looked into it. We looked into it in the past, and Bob will tell you that when you look at the traffic conditions that are required before the city can actually put in a legal stop sign or traffic light. Unfortunately, that segment or all of Highland doesn't comply. So just putting up a stop sign like the residents would like to stop people in that segment so that they're not continually driving is really not going to happen. It's not practical or possibly illegal. So I think the idea that that Andrew's presented in the past, I think is a great one to maybe use on this segment of Highland as a a test case to see if this stuff helps. And Andrew is certainly more versed at talking about what those particular innovations are. So I'll throw it back to you.
Well, and just to add to that, Matt, if we could add it to streets and sidewalks for this discussion for the February meeting too, could be ongoing, because we did hear a while back, and I believe it was Shadow Lawn, that there was some speeding, which kind of catapulted this discussion. So as Rob was talking about, and Bob, the engineer, did send some information on AMATs, which I'll forward to the rest of council so you can look at. They did a really, I think, an interesting presentation in December. But I believe what precipitated that was the city of Detroit is installing 4,500 speed tables throughout the city. And they did this is a 3-year program that they did. So they're dramatically increasing that. I'm not proposing that. AMATS is doing a smaller version in the city of Akron on select streets. Now their situation, I think, is a little bit different, because Mr. Finney forwarded us some information on speeding on Highland, and I believe there were 61, something like that, instances of crashes, on Highland, and a number of them were at 25 miles per hour or below, at least according to the police report. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong in that. But I think what AMATS has presented with these speed tables is interesting. And along with that, you have speed tables. One other thing that I discussed with Chief about was the possibility of solar powered radar signs throughout the city or in select areas. And these attached to the telephone pole so you could move them if you wanted. I think that's worthy of a discussion. And then also changing the perspective of the driver. So kind of a psychological approach to some of these areas, where along that stretch of Highland, you get to Chestnut, and the paint for the crosswalk, very bright. You obviously have a traffic light there so that it stops people. But taking a look at what paint might be able to do too, as a simple psychological deterrent to slow people down. And that was one of the reasons, Mr. Calfee, when you brought up Freedom, why I was asking, could you take those bricks and relay them as a crosswalk somewhere else? Because it's a different texture. It might slow drivers down, or at least encourage them to slow down, just make them more aware of their surroundings. So I think it's a longer discussion, but with the email that Rob received about the person right down the road from me, which we do see a lot of speeding. I'm sure the mayor can attest to that on Freedom as well, but we do see a lot of speeding on Highland. That's kind of what started this conversation.
A question, when you're referring to traffic tables, is that the politically correct word for speed bump?
Well, it's not a speed bump. And Bob's corrected me many times on that.
I need to get up to speed on what we call it.
Yeah, it's a speed table. And what's interesting is actually one piece of information I left out that you will read when I send you the report from AMATS is they're temporary too. They're rubber mats that just raise the car up a little bit. Supposedly they're better on the car itself and the road, or if you have, obviously streets, the street department that's taking their plows out, it's supposed to be a little easier on the plow. So yeah, it's an actual table though. It rises up a little bit, levels off, and then goes back down.
Thank you.
When you read, as Andrew said, he'll send you the AMATS report. You can get on amatsplanning.org and review the report yourself, but we can send you the link too. That's not a problem. It'll explain it quite a bit better. And it is interesting that they studied the speed on 2 segments before they put them in. Then they studied the speed during, then they studied the speed after, and the speed went back to the same as before the speed tables were installed. So evidently they did work. Doesn't mean it's going to stop the fender benders and the rear end crashes at the intersections, but it may slow the cars down. As Andrew said, I think as the police department used to have a speed trailer that they used to put out there, and it would show your speed as you approached. Those types of mechanisms also draw attention to the motorist that maybe they're not paying attention and they did go over the speed limit. Those types of things could be employed also. But I would like to study that corridor to see truly where the speed is, if it's a certain time of day, whether the police department can do that with a radar gun, or if they have a radar gun handy, the engineering department can do it, and just kind of go out periodically and start clocking some of these vehicles to see what time of day, how fast are they going, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know we have some other areas as well that the street I live on is also used for a cut through to Diamond Street. And we have, 2 sets of stop signs, and for whatever reason, people speed through to each stop sign or they blow the stop signs. And it amazes me. It's like almost like a runway between stop signs. They'll speed up to get to the next stop sign. And the stop signs are supposed to be there to, slow down the vehicles as they cut through our street. But I've noticed through the years that I've lived here that they're using it almost as a runway to stop signs, to this stop sign to the next stop sign. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of works out.
So my perspective on this, because this isn't the first time it's been brought to my attention, this segment of Highland, is that, and I think Bob knows more about why putting in stop signs and other, street devices won't work, or we won't be able to do it. My only point is, the residents there are very concerned about safety. Obviously, when you have your front porch taken out, and those houses are not right on the street, so that car went quite off kilter to hit that porch, and certainly it could have been a lot worse. I think a couple of people did go to the hospital, but I don't know that any serious injuries were incurred. But so, I mean, I really think, in my opinion, at least the representative of that ward, that we should do what we can. We can't do what we can't, right? We can't put in stop signs if they're not going to be legal stop signs. But if we can try some of these other things, which don't sound like they cost a lot of money, then hopefully we'll maybe prevent something. We can study their effectiveness. And I think it's a good test area, given where it is, how it functions, how many people use it. And if some of these traffic calming techniques work, then certainly we can try them in other places as well for very little expense, relatively little expense. And I'm all for all kinds of studies. I think the problem with the kind of study you're talking about, Bob, is it takes manpower for the police to sit there and collect this data. And I'm all for it if the mayor and other people want to do it. But that might take some time to put together. I just wonder how quickly we might be able to do some of these other things. And I'm not so sure about the speed tables. You can call them what you want, but I don't think our residents are going to appreciate, suddenly when there wasn't an impediment there before, suddenly there being one, especially this time of year. But I think some of the other things that Andrew talked about are worth trying. That's my opinion anyway. But yeah, I do believe we need to have further discussion. This isn't going to happen overnight. Matt, we need to put it in your committee, see if we can have further discussions, to see where it goes. But I just would hate to wake up one morning and have someone from Highland call me and, say someone got hurt in an accident, and then, where was the city when we needed them, that kind of thing. So.
I agree too, Robin. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not supposed to use stop signs as speed deterrents. And they have to be used for safety and that kind of, so just popping up a stop sign isn't going to work. But, I'm not even thinking of the fender benders and that. I'm thinking of the pedestrians, people traveling, bikes. We're trying to encourage people to go use our downtown area. That's one of the ways that people are going to get there. So we need to make sure that that's a safe throughway. I mean, all of our streets to get down there. So I think that anything we can do is going to be beneficial.
All right.
Sorry, I just looked at the reports from 2010 to 2020. The ODOT crash data shows 0 bicycles and 0 pedestrians on that stretch. There is a perception that the residents see with fender benders. 77% of the, give me 1 second. To do some quick math, the number starts at 21 and goes to 69. So that's about 50 crashes in 10 years. The one latest crash that happened in December did not make the report yet. But the perception is it's an unsafe zone. 77% of these were fender benders or failure to yield. If speed was involved, the police reports do not show that. So when I review the crash data, I don't see information that warrants that speed is an issue.
Yeah. And just to add to
I
that,
believe we all drive at what we consider. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what you were saying, that it was going to be one of my questions, if the speed radars would even work if crashes were in there. And that's why I was talking about some of the psychological paints or whatever it might be to make them more aware. So sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Well, no, I agree. I think many of us drive down a road at what we believe is a safe and reasonable speed. And before you know it, you're going 35 miles an hour in a 25 because you feel it's a safe and reasonable speed. So I know the speed limit's posted and I know we can get a traffic ticket for doing that, but we don't feel we're out of control. However, and we've all seen the flashing speed limit signs, this is the speed you're going. What do? You hit your brakes, say, crap, I'm not paying attention, I got to slow down. So my opinion would be if we can put some of these signs back up. Again, I don't know what happened to the police department speed trailer that they used to have, but I think that's very effective for drawing attention. I would also, one of the other things we do when we look at the police and the crash reports is to look to see if these people are local, to see if they drive these streets daily. And some of the crashes they do, some of them, one of the two parties involved were not locals. So all of that stuff plays into these crash reports. But again, 77% of these were fender benders and stretched out over time. The one that happened in March of 19, the driver was drunk, very drunk from what I was told. And I actually went out to that house that night and allowed them to occupy the house because of the structural, there was not structural issues. But so I did get to see that firsthand. So we have to, it's my opinion, we have to have a reason to put a speed table or put an obstruction in the road to slow vehicles down. And you're right, the Ohio Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices states to put up a four-way stop it must meet the warrant analysis at one intersection. And in this case, we don't have 5 crashes at one intersection. I take that back. There was one intersection, I think we did have close to that a few years ago. But when you look at those crashes, a 4-way stop would not have prevented those types of crashes. So anyway, if the police department has a radar gun that the engineering department can use, that's fine. If we want to buy a radar gun for the engineering department, that's fine too. I'm not aware of a company that rents these. I tried to rent a light meter gauge to check our stop signs. We had some Kent State students doing a report for us this past summer, and I couldn't find a company to do that. So if anybody knows of something, my department can certainly do that.
All right.
My suggestion is simply that we've opened the discussion today. I don't know that we need to come to a conclusion tonight. We do need to respect the process. If we do anything, it should start in the streets and sidewalks committee. So I think Andrew and I have discussed this between ourselves, and, Bob and I have shared email. And I think it's worthy just to investigate whether something other than, those traffic control devices, stop signs, traffic lights and such. If there are alternatives, I think they're worth investigating. I mean, we need to be forward and innovative in how we think about these things. And I think we need to be responsive when they come up, even if the data are not clear indicators of what we have to do. They should be, I think, responding to residents when their safety is at stake, or at least their perceived safety. I think it's important. And I'm sure that's not the only segment of street in the city that has these concerns. I'm bringing it up because I'm aware of them. You may be aware of others. So,
Adding on to, just for discussion purposes, one of the things, Matt, that I want to kind of put on our committee agenda as well to talk about, and Bob, you would be a part of this as well. I would really like for us to explore the Safe Routes to Schools program. They have a nice program with ODOT. We could partner with the schools. The schools could receive the non-infrastructure funding, and the city could receive the infrastructure funding that could balance out some of the areas of sidewalks and signage and street paint, things like that, for our K-8 school areas.
I've looked into it in the past.
I did one for
There's a lot of work that's in. There's a lot of work that's involved.
Yep, I did it for the city of Warren, so I know what's involved. And I think if we have a good team, we would be able to do really well on it.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else to add? And if not, well, Matt, if you're all right, we'll add it to your agenda for the February meeting, further discuss.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, that's it for this evening's meeting. So we will see you in February for the official meeting. All right.
Have a good night.